We're going to talk about this at the top of the episode. Clyde, there's no room for kissing on Survivor. I have a zero tolerance policy for kissing on Survivor now. Welcome to Survivor Analytics. Here's your analytic for today. 2 kisses in 2 episodes is too many, especially because both of them should not have been allowed. Last week, Candace was voted off. We're watching Survivor Cook Islands. This is episode 13 or 14, depending on how you count on Paramount Plus, but it's episode 13 of Sequential Survivor. In episode 12, Candace was voted off. What's the thing Jeff says, Clyde?
What's he say? You must leave the tribal council area immediately.
You must leave the tribal council area immediately. Thank you, true expert. Candace, last week, spends 45 seconds making out with Adam. Disgusting, against the rules. Should have left right away. Should not be allowed to do that. This week, Jonathan, his wife, comes out for the Friends and Family Challenge reward. And when he is sent to exile, full-on makeout. Same thing. Doesn't ask for permission. Jeff even comments that Jonathan doesn't ask for permission, yet does not stop him. They're way too tonguey for network television.
Okay, they don't get the Jack seal of approval, which I'm sure they were shooting for when they went in for that kiss.
These are HBO level kisses, not CBS level kisses. That's what I'm saying. And they're both in situations where the contestant involved, the survivor involved, should be in the middle of either being voted off or sent to exile. And no wonder Jonathan comes back from exile super happy. Dude just made out with his wife, like, after 31 days without her. He should be sad, and he's not. Anyway, that's my rant to start the episode. How did you feel about the episode, Clyde?
I thought this one was okay. A bit of a surprising outcome with the Jonathan boot. I know we talked last week about how there's a good chance that the railroad members might just get picked off one after another. So the dynamics get shaken up a bit this week. Not a ton of character moments. I feel like last week there was a lot of drama surrounding Jonathan versus Candace. And with Candace out of the picture, we don't get the romantic scenes between her and Adam anymore. We don't get her beefing with Jonathan. This episode felt like it was a return to form for the season. I felt like we really hit the high between the mutiny twist and the Candace boot. And this one I wasn't as crazy about. There are some heartwarming moments in the family visit that I will want to inform you on, because I have a feeling that you're going to hate the family visit and you might come around once I give you some Survivor lore.
I always hate the family stuff. But here's what I will throw out for this episode. I agree, kind of a return to form. Pretty mid episode. Challenges were okay. I do want to throw out and give some props. We finally get some Becky and Sundra confessionals. Like, I don't think we've heard Becky speak in 3 weeks. And we get at least a couple of things from her this week.
Really? I can't remember a single Becky confessional. I remember there's a couple Sundra ones.
Becky this week explains, I believe, the food hiding.
Oh,
plan.
Yeah. The food hiding plan that amounted to nothing.
We'll get back to that. But do you want to jump in with Parvati?
Yeah. Parvati stabs herself with a machete right out of the gate. That's how the episode opens, with an injury.
Yeah.
I never thought Parvati would get medically evacuated for this particular injury. And the edit around this entire segment is weird in that when Parvati first slices herself with the machete, they don't show the hand, which makes sense. It's network television. Yep. It's kind of gruesome. But then you fast forward 2 minutes and there are multiple close-up shots on Parvati's finger.
Yeah.
So it was a complete 180 for me.
I thought from the way that they were talking about it that it was a worse injury than it was, because they start talking about like, oh, Parvati cut her finger off. It's a gnarly cut, but it's mild enough that they're able to stitch it up on the beach and she's able to continue to compete. Parvati's job description, right, when her little placard pops up on confessionals, is that she's a boxer. And I want to give her some credit because I'm kind of anti-Parvati and certainly anti-Adam. She takes it like a champ. I mean, she is very, very calm throughout. She handles the fact that she's being stitched up on a beach calmly and with as much dignity as you probably could. I was glad it wasn't worse, but I wish that they still hadn't shown it. I didn't want to see any of that.
The one highlight for me in that entire segment was the doctor, because I feel like there isn't a consistent doctor on the show.
There's in the new era.
Oh, yeah, in the new era. But these people that come in for Cook Islands, I have no clue who they are.
If you're a doctor and you spend 25 years of your life being the doctor on Survivor, you might want to reevaluate your priorities as a doctor.
That sounds like the dream job. I would totally do that.
You should go do a little bit of Doctors Without Borders, right? You're already in the extreme location. Go put your medical skills to some humanitarian use other than like, oh, Parvati forgot to drink water today and she passed out and we gave her Gatorade.
But in the heat of the moment, when Parvati slices her finger, the doctor walks over and the first thing he says is, the good news is that you won't need to cut your fingernails for a while. Incredible dad joke at the absolute worst time.
Yeah, but it doesn't affect the rest of the episode one bit.
And I love having Parvati around. If she got medically evacuated, would I be devastated at this point in the season? Probably not, because I just feel like she hasn't contributed a lot to the show since the pre-merge.
Let me say something about that, because friend of the show, guest host, Carrie, talked about Parvati as one of her favorite players, although I don't think Parvati is actually one of her favorite players. Parvati is a famous player, a talented, supposedly, right? People talk about her as one of the best, at least best known players. And that is my perception as somebody who's only seen however many seasons of the show we've watched on this show. 5?
This is number 6. Yeah.
As somebody who's only seen 6 out of 46, right? I don't feel like I have seen from Parvati enough greatness to justify the fact that her name is up there with Russell Hantz in terms of, or Boston Rob, in terms of recognizability. She played well with Nate. I'm really hoping that we see great things from her in the back couple episodes, because I don't know, it feels like she hasn't been the social ninja that social media would make her out to be.
I think that's a very fair take. There's points of the season where Parvati's just buried in the edit. I think we see a lot from her early on when she's luring in the men on the Raro tribe. But when the post-merge hits, she kind of just falls into the Raro collective of people that hate Jonathan.
Yeah.
And outside this medical situation, her hatred for Jonathan is her primary characteristic in the post-merge.
Yeah.
But I'm good to go to the reward challenge / family visit if you are.
Yeah. So we get to the challenge. It's a reward challenge. And Jeff says, okay, you're going to have 2 buckets and you're going to fill a bigger bucket. First person to fill their bigger bucket wins. And your reward is a picnic at a sacred cave. Already, I'm like, oh, that's a vintage Survivor, bit of sacrilegious cultural appropriation. Let's go eat wings and meatloaf in a sacred cave. Thankfully, they don't actually eat in the cave, but the way Jeff described it initially, I literally thought they were going to be eating like on a picnic blanket in this religious site. Oh, and the winner of the reward will also get to exile someone. But wait, there's more. Family members start walking out of the woods from wherever they were being held. Turns out the reward is not only time with family, the family members will have to compete. My question for you at this stage, we've seen a couple of challenges where the family members compete. I feel like in China, they competed.
Yeah, in China, they completed a maze where I think the family members were yelling out directions to the players.
I mean, because now it's letters from home, right? In the new era, they're not flying people out to Fiji for 12 minutes of screen time.
That's not in the budget anymore.
Frankly, it's absurd that they flew people out to the Cook Islands, which I have to imagine is a long 36-hour day of travel, no matter where you're coming from, because there can't be that many flights to the Cook Islands, for most of them to go home after 5 minutes. But so the family members compete. Basically, the survivors will be holding one bucket at the water line and will be blindfolded. They are hurling their water towards their family member several feet away, who will then put whatever water they catch into the bucket. Honestly, I feel like the blindfolding was unnecessary here.
I wrote down the exact same thing. I don't know why the players were blindfolded.
Yeah.
Their families are only there for so long, and production won't even let them look at their family members.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of like that cruelty, to be honest, but it makes the challenge absurd. Jonathan's wife at one point is wringing out her soaked shirt into the bucket because she's getting more water on her than in the bucket.
You can tell that Jonathan and his wife, Stacy, are both fans of the show. That they're there to win.
Yeah.
And I actually want to talk about Stacy briefly here because this is just something that's pretty tragic, but important to bring up.
Oh, no.
But Stacy was diagnosed with ALS in 2017, and she passed away from it in 2021. Jonathan today still remains a very prominent advocate for the ALS community.
Oh, that's really cool.
During some recent Survivor seasons that came out in like 2019, there were videos and like ads with Jonathan and Stacy promoting awareness for ALS and funding for that community. So
that's really cool.
There was something really heartwarming about seeing her in this segment of the episode, like in full health, and they came really close to winning the challenge. I think they were just seconds behind Parvati and her dad, whose name is Mike.
I'm so glad you wrote down Parvati's dad's name. Wait, I think Adam's dad's name is Mike.
I wrote down all the family members' names. We can walk through them all if you want.
Well, check Adam's dad's name because I thought it was Mike.
Adam's dad's name was obviously George.
Oh,
come on.
Of course.
That's classic Survivor trivia.
To give Jonathan and his wife some flowers, I wish you had stopped me from my horrible anti-kissing rant earlier.
Oh, no. I think that's just a general rule in Survivor. You can make the argument for that across the board, that once players technically lose in a challenge, that they should not be able to say goodbye to their loved ones. I think that's a fair take.
I love their intensity, though. And when they lose, Jonathan's wife is pissed. Like she takes the loss hard because she's worked hard. And frankly, it's the hardest we've seen Jonathan really work in a challenge, I feel like. Like a lot of these, as soon as he gets thrown off, he kind of falls apart. In this one, he goes hard. Parvati and Mike win it, and Parvati immediately exiles Jonathan. Jonathan smooches his wife a bit much.
And I do disagree with you on that. I think it's kind of badass that Jonathan kissed his wife goodbye. If I was there with my theoretical wife, I would be too timid to kiss her goodbye before going to Exile Island. I would look at Jeff with puppy dog eyes and say, Mr. Jeff, can I please go kiss my wife before I leave? And he would probably go, no.
And he'd get out his knife that he always carries, and he goes, no, get on the boat. Go to Exile. We don't see anything from Jonathan's time on Exile.
He is just that isolated that they don't even bother showing him. He disappears for like 15, 20 minutes of the episode.
Yeah, and he comes back with a feather in his hat, and that's the only change. So Parvati gets to choose. Oh, no, this is another twist.
I know.
Parvati does not choose the rewardees. Parvati's dad gets to choose without any conversation. Nobody's allowed to talk. If you were Parvati's dad in this moment, how would you choose, right? Are you trying to gauge alliances? Are you picking based on family bond? What would you say is your criteria?
It's totally based on vibes because Mike doesn't know anything about the alliance dynamics on the island. I think he actually chooses the two best players possible, though. And this is a theory I have with Mike. I think he's a strategic mastermind. I think it runs in the DNA of the Shallow family.
Yeah. Is that Parvati's last name?
Yeah.
Parvati Shallow? Like shallow water?
Yeah. Like Shallow.
That's a pretty cool last name.
Out of every player that Mike could have selected, Sundra and Adam might be the two best because Adam you need with you on reward to campaign for the people on the bottom. And Sundra is someone that could potentially flip over to work with the Raros. I feel like your two approaches, if you're Adam and Parvati, are you either need to try to pick up the partnership of Yul and Becky, or you need to pick up the duo of Ozzy and Sundra. And between those two options, I don't see Yul and Becky flipping. I think they're in the power seat within their current alliance. So Sundra and Ozzy might be the better route. And Mike read that like a book.
I mean, you're right, but you're not right. What's the word for that? Wrong. You're right, but you're wrong. I think you're absolutely right that those are the power dynamics, and that's who you should take. And we see in the next time on, Ozzy and Sundra are being tempted. Keeping Parvati and Adam around, giving them more time to sway people is a big mistake this week. And Parvati is definitely building on that success. Her dad is not thinking of any of that. I think her dad sees the emotional reaction of Sundra and her mom. There's a lot of tears there. That is a very emotional reunion. And he sees that there's only one white man that his daughter doesn't hate. I genuinely think that's it.
I think you're selling Mike a bit short.
I'm comfortable with that because he doesn't know anything. I do wonder if Parvati did get a chance to whisper anything to him when she goes over.
Last thing I want to throw out from the challenge before we go to the reward is Parvati's selection to send Jonathan to exile, because I think it's the most impactful decision of the entire episode.
Yeah.
When Parvati takes Jonathan out of the equation, that gives the Raros the opportunity to really cozy up to the I-2s and portray Jonathan as this agent of chaos.
Yeah.
Like, I think you can make the argument that without the Exile Island twist, Jonathan survives this round and he makes it to the final 6. And when he gets back from exile, he straight up tells Yul that he knows that something is shifted at camp while he was gone.
Yeah. Something to throw out there as well. One little bit before we go to the reward is Ozzy feels responsible for this win. He says in confessional that he thinks feeding Adam and Parvati has fueled their last couple wins. And he's mad that they don't do any work and they eat all the food. And essentially they're practicing load management, doing well because they're eating all the other food. And then I have one note from the reward.
Is this the reward where they go to the cave or the section of the reward where the families go back to camp?
Oh, I don't care about the part where the families go to camp. Do you have anything about that?
The family camp visit is incredible. I'm surprised that you don't care about that section.
I don't care about the family stuff. Like,
2 big highlights from the family camp section. One highlight is the immediate contrast between the family time of Adam and Parvati and Sundra. Adam and his dad are hanging out on the beach. Parvati offers her dad a tour of the camp. And meanwhile, Sundra sees her mom and thinks, hey, we got more hands on deck. We got to put you to work out here.
That's true.
She's taking her mom into the woods to go collect sticks, which I think is hilarious. If I ever go on Survivor and I get a loved one's visit, I'm sitting back in the chair and I'm sending my loved one to go do all the chores around camp. Give me a little bit of a break.
Sundra works too, though. Oh, so you're just saying you would be even lazier.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I'm not trying to impress my family member in jury votes. I need to impress the other contestants.
I mean, that's fair. That is fair.
Or I would send my family member idol hunting would be my other one. So other highlight for me is that Ozzy is with you, Jack, and that he hates the family visit.
Yeah.
He says it's annoying having all of the family members around camp.
Yeah.
He gives that spiel about feeling responsible for the success of Adam and Parvati because he's catching all the food. And I wrote down in my notes when he said that, it's been a while since we had a fishing segment from Ozzy. I feel like we were on a real hot streak earlier in the season with the scenes of him fishing in the ocean.
Ozzy comes back with a bunch of fish when Parvati has cut her hand.
It's not the same, though. We need to get the drone shots over the water. We need the underwater shots of Ozzy catching the fish.
Yeah.
And then I checked my notes again and realized that the last fishing segment was in episode 10. So it hasn't been that long since we got an Ozzy fishing segment, but this season has drilled that into my brain to the point where we go just a little bit without it, and I'm losing my mind. Respect to Ozzy for permanently affecting my perception of the show.
Yeah. Do you want to go on the actual reward now?
Yeah, this one I don't care that much about. I cared way more about the family segment.
My only note is they have chicken and biscuits, like there's some Southern food. And Parvati, in the most Valley Girl vocal fry voice, declares herself to be a Southern girl. I'm not going to Google Parvati because I don't want to be spoiled about her career, but I assume she's from California. Like,
you are correct. On her bio for Cook Islands, she's listed as hometown from West Hollywood, California.
Yeah.
And I think she has a very West Coast vibe to her.
Very West
Nothing about
Coast.
her shouts like Southern to me. So I don't know, maybe she grew up in the South and then moved to the West Coast when she was 3 years old. So even today, she's like, I'm technically a Southerner.
And like, who doesn't like chicken and biscuits, right? I mean, I'm actually from the South and I love chicken and biscuits, but like, it's a weird thing to claim. I'm not even that Southern, and I would feel weird saying I'm from the South and I love chicken and biscuits on a show because, like, I don't sound very Southern.
I'll also say that you mentioned Parvati's job description earlier as being the boxer.
Yeah.
Do you know what Sundra's day job is?
She's an actress.
She is an actress, and I looked her up on IMDb. She has features in Big Hero 6 and the recent movie Bob Marley One Love, which I recently watched on a plane. And I didn't see Sundra there. I don't think it made it into theaters. I think it was like a straight-to-plane kind of movie.
It did go to theaters, actually, I think. But there was some controversy where, like, I want to say, like, the Bob Marley estate didn't approve it or something. I feel like there was something like that where there was some legal consequence. Big Hero 6 is great. Who does she play in Big Hero 6?
I didn't do that level of research. You get 2 films from me and nothing else.
What's the point of being a true expert if you don't know what movie, what's the timestamp of her lines in Big Hero 6? Jeez. So that's the reward. Meanwhile at camp, Yule suggests that they start hiding some food from Adam and Parvati. Quote from Ozzy, "If you can't get your own food at this point, maybe you shouldn't be in the game." And they kind of decide to do it. They start throwing coconuts into the bushes, and then that plan falls apart because Adam and Parvati and Sundra bring back a ton of food, which something else that should not be allowed on Survivor. If you go on reward, no food should come back from reward.
Oh, I agree. It defeats the entire purpose of winning reward.
And basically, it not only defeats the purpose of winning reward, it cancels this fantastic plan to starve Adam and Parvati.
So that's something I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you think hiding food in Survivor is fair game? Is that
Yes.
something that you would do if you were on the show?
100%.
I think it's fair and players should be able to do it, but I don't know if it's ever worth the risk. Because if someone finds out that you were hiding food from them, you look like a complete asshole in front of the entire tribe. I think the risk reward is unbalanced.
The key is your social game, right? If you have a good enough social game that you can convince your alliances, your fellow tribe members, that hiding food, that starving somebody when you're all already starving a little bit is a good idea, then you're playing an incredible social game. That's a jam level social game.
Okay.
Right? I think that's the kicker to that. But it doesn't happen.
It technically doesn't happen, right? Like Becky says that, oh, we're no longer going to hide the food from them, but they already threw the coconuts into the jungle. Like that food is already hidden, but I guess they're just going to continue finding them at the same rate. I'll also note that I feel like this is a segment where we get another glimpse of evil Ozzy. We saw this version of Ozzy very early in the season when he throws the challenge to knock out our sweet, sweet fan favorite, Bailey Garcia. And then Ozzy becomes the Dolphin Boy for 2.5 months. And out of nowhere, in episode 12, evil Ozzy returns in hiding some of the fish. So that didn't surprise me a ton given his history. I was shocked that Yule was willing to hide the food from the other players. I thought Yule would put his foot down and say, like, that's a moral line that I'm unwilling to cross.
I mean, I think it's got to be really frustrating to be in a group where there's these people willing to, as far as we have seen, do no work. Maybe it's the edit. Maybe it's just what everybody's seeing, and they're saying it, but it's not actually true. But what we are presented with as the audience is Parvati and Adam and formerly Candace and formerly Nate, no work. That's a month in, got to be really, really frustrating to work really hard to get food. And then the one time Parvati cuts her own coconut, she cuts her thumb and says, oh, I can't do anymore. So I can understand it from that perspective, right? It is a big risk. I feel like 2007, so Facebook existed, Twitter was brand new or just about to start. Social media, in the age of modern social media, actively starving somebody else on live TV or on national TV, big risk, huge risk for your life. Back then, fair game. So I get why he did it, and I approve.
Well, it's Yule. I feel like you would approve no matter what he does.
Yule could have punched Jeff in the face, and I'd say nice form.
Well, it was just surprising to me because Yule has this reputation of being the United Nations, the one that brings everybody together at camp. But once you take some people away and he's left to his own devices, he's willing to stab someone in the back. It just shows that cutthroat side of his game.
He's not my winner, I will say that.
You want to go to immunity?
Yeah, so we go to immunity. It's an obstacle course over the water, retrieving bundles. Then you have to build a pole and use that pole to retrieve a couple of rings. I have literally 2 notes because it's an aquatic challenge. Obviously, Ozzy's going to win, right? My only 2 notes, real notes, are the pole construction is not slot these puzzle pieces together to make a pole. It is tie sticks together. That's it. It's up to the contestant to figure out length, knot placement, all that jazz, which I love, right? It's definitely more challenging, right? And an interesting twist on what is otherwise a fairly mundane challenge. So I really liked that piece. And Sundra takes the hardest fall I think I've ever seen on Survivor. Holy crap, does she fall on like a barrel or something. And I was shocked she got up and kept going, but good for her.
Yeah, the barrel section of this challenge posed major issues for a lot of the contestants. I think there's one part where there's essentially a log jam at the obstacle course as the players need to take turns going across the barrels because everyone's falling except for Ozzy. And you said this, but this challenge is complete Ozzy dominance from beginning to end. He's in the lead at the start and he never looks back. By the time he's building his pole, most of the players haven't even returned with their first set of sticks.
Yeah, it's dominant. It's really well done.
By winning this, Ozzy now has locked down 2 immunity challenge wins on the season. So
he's a true meat boy.
He is a true meat boy. And we're getting closer and closer to the end. And players like a Yule, like a Becky, the strategically minded ones, need to start thinking, when do we want to take the shot at Ozzy? Because he seems like someone that's capable of winning a decent number of these challenges.
I feel like there's basically one thing to talk about, honestly, between now and the rest of the episode. And that's the question of who should the majority, the comfortable 4 I2 members, former I2, vote out. And it's a question of effectively Adam or Jonathan. So there's all this conversation, and it's pretty classic Survivor stuff of vote for me, keep me in. They'll say whatever they need to say. I saved you, you saved me, blah, blah, blah. My question is more for you. Who do you think was the right choice here for that majority?
The right choice is difficult here because it felt like last week Yule had already put his stake in the ground and said, we're going to roll with the I2s plus Jonathan and knock off the Raros, which they proved by voting out Candace. So going into this week, I thought they would just continue with that plan because the Raros already made the pitch of, if you keep Jonathan around longer than us, we might not vote for you on the jury. And Yule said, I don't care. I'm going to vote you guys out anyway. And he does a takesy backseat this week and says, actually, maybe I will vote him out to please you guys. So I don't know. I go back and forth on this because my opinion of this move essentially boils down to the honesty of the Raro contestants. If the Raro players were serious that they would hold Yule accountable for taking Jonathan further, then knocking out Jonathan is probably the right decision. But if they were lying and they were just saying whatever possible to weasel their way in, this is probably the wrong move because I think you said this last week, but if a Raro member sits at the end, they win the season.
Yeah, they've got numbered. Yeah, they've got Nate, Candace, Brad, Jenny,
Rebecca.
Is Rebecca on the jury?
Rebecca's on the jury.
There's some people on this jury who did not earn jury power. That's crazy.
I think it's only Raro members on the jury right now. So if you let one of those people make it to the end, they'll probably win. And if you take out Jonathan here, then going into Final 6, you still have 2 of them left. So there's an inherent risk with it. I understand the argument both ways. My perception's probably a little bit different knowing how things play out later in the season, but I wanted to hear your thoughts on this, watching it for the first time.
I mean, it's a tricky question of jury management. What Yule has to weigh and what anybody in Yule's position would have to weigh is optimizing who's sitting on the jury versus optimizing your chances of getting to the end to present to the jury. I think if he gets rid of Adam here, he takes out a massive physical threat that he's not allied with and keeps Jonathan around for another vote or two, takes out a threat, takes away the chance of another alliance poaching people, because right now it is 4-2-1. Jonathan on the outs, Yul with his 3, and the Adam and Parvati duo. If you break up the Adam and Parvati duo, it really becomes an individual game, and he's got Becky, and he's kind of got Jonathan. I think in that regard, I would say go Adam. Yeah, I could understand going either direction here. I do worry that in a game where everybody hates Jonathan, sending Jonathan to the jury might alienate the jury against you, right? Adam and Parvati threaten to hold you accountable for taking him further. Well, what about Candace and Nate, who now have to spend every day in Ponderosa with him? They're probably pissed. I mean, it's a really tough position, and I think for Yul, the question is, how does he optimize his path to the end? And I think another thing to consider here is, and I bet Yul is considering this, and we see a little bit of it in the next time on, there's some fractures in the I-2-4. Ozzy is a massive challenge threat, and we're at the point in the season where that could take him to the end. And so I think Yul is probably also weighing, if I have to turn on Ozzy, I'll have a better chance of doing that with Adam and Parvati here, right? If I've got to flip on one of my own, I need votes.
You also need someone that can beat Ozzy in a challenge, and Adam is way more likely to do that than someone like Jonathan. And I think that's a major factor that played into all of this as well. It's not necessarily a question of the votes, because I have a lot of confidence in Yul gathering the votes where he needs them. It's just, will he even have the opportunity to take the shot to begin with?
Yeah. So
what's your final decision then? Are you team voting out Jonathan?
My final decision is keep Jonathan. I think splitting up the Adam Parvati duo at this stage in the game is more important than anything else, because I think, like we said, if you're Herrero at the end, you're winning. I think that overshadows everything else, because if Yul can get to the end, even with Ozzy's probably the only one who really has a threat against Yul, besides Adam and Parvati.
Still, that's a big chunk of the cast. Out of the last 6 players, 3 of them have a shot at beating Yul. You're essentially saying that Yul only has a locked win against Sandra and Becky, and I think most people would have a locked win against Sandra and Becky. At Tribal Council, we get some more Jonathan hate. Adam claims that Jonathan is a bad person that doesn't deserve to be there, which brings up the central question of, what does it mean to deserve to be on Survivor? Like, that's such a subjective thing. And when Jonathan challenges him on that, Adam says that Jonathan lacks integrity and, quote, you flop all the time. So Adam is mad that Jonathan is playing the game.
Jonathan does his best to handle it well, which is okay. And, quote, I've earned my right to be here. And he's right. He has played a good game that has made it this far. There are players who seemed to be playing a better game that did not make the jury. Rebecca is on the jury. Brad is on the jury. What? Those things don't make sense. And nobody's saying, hey, Sandra doesn't deserve to be here because she's part of an alliance that's done well. But she has. Sandra has managed good relationships and made it this far. And she deserves a lot of credit for that. I think Jonathan, just because he has played out in the open, is getting hate that he doesn't really deserve.
The only other highlight I have before the vote is there's a moment with Yul where he straight up says to Jeff, the other players, and the jury that the I-2-4 are in control of the game. He doesn't lump Jonathan into his group. He makes it clear that he wants to roll with that 4-person alliance to the end. Then Yul claims that he has a lot of influence within that group due to his possession of the idol. He really hypes up this godfather persona in front of the jury. And this will connect to my loser later on. I later gave the loser to Becky because I feel like Yul is continuing to have these moments where he presents himself as a powerful figure. He does it this week at Tribal Council, and he did it last week at the auction by flashing the idol. So I think he's very intentional in his presentation to the other people.
I like it because I think in Yule's presentation, and yes, I know I'm very biased, in Yule's capable hands, in Yule's beautiful, capable hands, he's so wise, so perfect. Jack's biases aside, Yule has been presented for a long time as this United Nations, very level-headed, very rational player, right? He doesn't come off as bragging exactly. It feels so statement-like. This is just reality. This is not spin. This is not hype. It is, hey, it's math. There's 4 of us. I have an immunity idol. It is what it is. It is a circumstance where Yule can hype himself up without seeming like he's hyping himself up very much.
And he can hype himself up without dealing with the repercussions, because if the vote flips on him, he's got the idol that will carry him to the next round. Moments like that make me upset with the other members of I2 because I wish some of them stood up and said, here's what I'm contributing to the Alliance. I wish Ozzy said, I'm the one winning the challenges, which enables us to pick off these people on the bottom.
Maybe Becky and Sundra, I bet they both stood up and said, here's what I've done. And Sundra gave a 30-second monologue describing how she's been a pivotal part of this alliance. And the edit decided to cut it entirely because they don't like Becky and Sundra for some reason.
Well, maybe they did that. Like, Becky's actually contributed a lot strategically to the season. She could have stood up and said, I'm making every decision alongside Yule for the entire game. And Sundra could have stood up and said, I was featured on Big Hero 6, or I will be featured in Big Hero 6, because I feel like Sundra's done the least out of that 4. Just something I wish we saw more of in the episode. Are you good to go to the vote?
Yeah, let's go to the vote.
Your final vote is 6-1. Every vote pouring on Jonathan, and 1 lone vote against Adam. So Jonathan gets sent home. I have an epitaph for him. R.I.P. Jonathan. He was ahead of his time. I really think
I like that
Jonathan was one of the most advanced strategic thinkers on this entire cast. Maybe better than Yule. Like, I think Yule's a way better social player than Jonathan, but Jonathan was willing to play a more modern, fluid, strategic game that you just didn't see in Season 13. I think if you took Jonathan and put him on a modern cast, potentially Survivor 50, because he's actually said in a recent interview that he would be willing to compete again.
I'd love to see him again. I really would.
I think he could do it. I would have way more confidence in Jonathan excelling in a recent season as compared to someone like an Adam or a Sundra who technically placed higher than him.
I think the one thing Jonathan would have to work on is smoothing down his edges. He's a little rough.
Yeah.
It's been 20 years, right? Almost 20 years. I have to imagine that's worn down, right? If he's still a part of the community, I bet he's a good dude.
I'm surprised by that because you were the #1 Jonathan hater on the podcast for a long time.
And then, Clyde, I found out that he dealt with a heartbreaking tragedy in his personal life after criticizing him for kissing his wife. So my issues with Jonathan were largely in the way that he spoke, especially to Flicka and to Candace, right? Spoke to younger women, and I didn't like that. But since then, everything he's been criticized for in the game is things I actually like about him. Everything we've just talked about, him actually playing the game. I'm trying not to be too harsh on him. I mean, I do feel bad.
I think if you're going to fault Jonathan as a player, the main thing you can point to is the fact that every alliance that he was a part of this season, he was near the bottom of the totem pole. On the original Raro, he's on the bottom. When he flips over to I2 for the first tribe swap, he's pretty low in the pecking order there. When he swaps over to Raro at the mutiny, he's on the bottom. And then when he goes back to I2 at the merge, he's the first person they pick off out of their group of 5. But with all that said, do you think Jonathan comes back and plays again?
No, because you just said he would be open to coming back.
He does return on Survivor.
Oh, you got me.
I have to be careful in my language here not to spoil anything. So.
Wow. Well played, sir.
So Jonathan returns next on Survivor Micronesia, Season 16, which is the one that we're building towards. So we have 3 returnees on that cast right now. You got James, Amanda, and Jonathan. Do you see Jonathan getting along well with either Amanda or James?
I could see him and James vibing. I don't know why.
Well, they both care about camp life. I feel like they're both focused on making sure everything's in order. You might remember in China, James was very close to Denise, the lunch lady.
Oh, yes. Yes,
And
of course.
he respected Denise so much, despite their very different backgrounds, because Denise worked hard around camp. So I think Jonathan could earn the good graces of James. I'm down to go to winners and losers. Where do you want to start?
Let's go winner.
My winner is Parvati.
My winner is also Parvati.
Oh, okay. So Parvati, I think, played the biggest role in flipping the I2s against Jonathan. Like I said earlier, if Jonathan does not attend exile, he probably survives this week. So I think Parvati did a great job at taking Jonathan out of camp and using that time alone with the other players to grow close to them. And who knows? Yes, Parvati is still on the bottom, but if she can convince the I2s to take out Adam before her, then she just needs to win a couple of challenges to reach the end where she would easily win the season. Like, granted, she's got to win those challenges against Ozzy, but at least there's a pathway to a win for her.
Yeah. The positioning of all of a sudden we're in final 6 and there's a 4-2 fundamental alliances. Things start to crumble here. Alliances do not stay big alliances. 4-person alliances at final 6 are not going to last, right? This is where infighting can happen and where the minority alliance can benefit. The minority in this case, of course, being the white alliance, which is ironic. I can see her benefiting from that. And if it doesn't work out, she has a meat shield in Adam. And then she has another day or two at camp to try and break up the alliance over there. So, yeah, I like that a lot for her.
Who is your loser?
It breaks my heart to say this.
No way.
My loser is Yule.
No way. This made my day, Jack. Oh, okay. To give you a little bit of perspective here, Yule has been your winner 8 times this season.
I'm so Yule favored.
So this is his first loss of the season.
That's insane. That's insane.
So why did you pick Yule?
Honestly, it's the flip side of why I picked Parvati. I don't see the 4 I2s sticking together this week. I'd like to, but I think the fact that Adam and Parvati could be kind of persuasive, they've got another chance to be persuasive. Everybody's going to be happy because Jonathan's not around. All of that creates an environment where Ozzy or Sandra, I think Becky and Yule are tight. I don't think anything's going to change there. But Ozzy or Sandra could flip. There's a very coherent and logical argument from the Raro members, the former Raro members. Hey, Yule's the one to beat, guys. And we got to flush this idol or he's going to make it to the end. And yes, that's going to be tricky, but we can take out his number 2 and Becky, and then he has no power and we can get him out the next week. There is a clear second choice, if need be. And it's kind of a now or never. If you don't flush the idol at 5 or at 6, he has it through 3, right?
The last valid round you can play it is the final 4.
Final 4. So he has it for 3 more votes.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So I don't think he's going home next week, but I do think the idol is in jeopardy. And once the idol goes, he is in a lot of danger. That's why he's my loser.
I'm happy Yule is on the board, at least once in the loser column. My loser is Becky. I think she enables Yule to stand in the spotlight once again this week. And I think Becky's playing a great game so far, but she just doesn't have the showmanship of Yule. She doesn't take the credit for the decisions that they make as a partnership. I think Becky's jury prospects are becoming more and more limited. I think she would lose to Adam. I think she would lose to Parvati because they have all the Raro connections. Ozzy would have all the flashy challenge wins. Yule is perceived as the godfather. Like, Becky's only winning combo right now might be against Sandra.
That's fair. That's very fair.
It's wild to say, considering that I think she's voted correctly in every tribal council that she's attended, yet she can only beat one person here.
Once again, just continuing to feel bad for Becky because she's getting a horrible edit. It's just a bummer of an edit, and I wish that she was getting a better treatment.
Do you have an honorable?
I actually did not write one down. I only have 2 pages of notes, and this episode was so kind of middle of the road for me that I don't have an honorable.
Oh, wow. No honorables this week.
Well, I'll give one. I had one, and I didn't write it down because I was like, is this too convoluted? Is it too esoteric? but I hate to disappoint. I don't want to have a blank cell in your Excel sheet.
Oh, okay.
My honorable will go to Archimedes, the Greek mathematician. Ancient Greek mathematician, born 287, died 212 BCE. Very, very accomplished mathematician, physicist, engineer. He developed the water screw, the method of getting water from a lower place up to a higher place efficiently. He had a proof of how levers work, figured out the center of gravity, figured out the law of buoyancy, or a form of the law of buoyancy, compound pulleys, war machines. Supposedly, he invented a mirror system that could harness the power of the sun and create a death ray that would burn wooden ships.
Oh,
wow. Basically like magnifying glass on ants kind of thing. That's apocryphal, though. There is no actual proof that he did that. A whole bunch of geometry stuff, really pretty impressive stuff for back then. Figuring out the area of a circle, surface area of a sphere, all kinds of stuff. Why I bring him up is because of his bathtub. Clyde, are you familiar with the word eureka?
Yes.
That comes from Archimedes. Well, kind of. Archimedes got in his bathtub, saw that the water went up, and realized that water displacement was a thing. And it was a breakthrough in his research, and he jumped out of his bathtub, stark raving naked, and ran through the halls of his home shouting eureka, and presumably went and did some more research. So after the buckets being thrown into buckets to displace water, shout out to Archimedes.
That's how we get to Archimedes? That is ridiculous. I thought you were going to come up with some kind of like principle, like mathematical principle that's related to the voting dynamics of the season with the 4-2 split. It's just the fact that they were pouring water into buckets.
Yep.
Okay.
Who's your dishonorable mention? Let's end on hatred.
My dishonorable goes to Jonathan's signature hat. It was weird to me that he says in confessional before tribal council that he knows he's on the chopping block, yet he doesn't take all of his belongings with him to the actual tribal. And the hat is a signature look.
Yeah.
It's what makes Jonathan Jonathan. And now that he's out of the game, I can tell you that the general Survivor community does not call him Jonathan. They call him by his last name, which is Penner. So it's been painful for me this entire season to retrain my brain and call him Jonathan instead of Penner.
Is there another Jonathan?
No, but Penner's just a cool last name, so that's what he's went by. And I think in Micronesia, I'm pretty sure Jeff calls him Penner. That's a sign that Jeff likes you as a contestant. If he
adopts the nickname.
Yeah.
Like how he didn't with Flicka.
Yep. That's everything I got for this week.
Awesome. Well, 2 more episodes, right? Is that right? 2 more episodes of Survivor Cook Islands?
We're getting close to the end. Next week, we'll be covering the final 6, where Jack will reveal his final tribal council predictions.
Yeah.
We'll be looking at every single possibility. We can examine the exciting Sandra versus Becky scenario and who wins there. But you'll have to wait till then.
See you next week.